from everybody. B.B. King said that Peter's tone was the sweetest tone, he'd ever heard, and it made him sweat, and he said all these amazing things about him. So
he has the sweetest tone I ever heard. He was the only one who gave me the cold sweats. These words from B.B. King weren't about Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, or Jeff Beck. They were about Peter Green, the forgotten guitar god who founded Fleetwood Mac, before they became the voice of 1970s California rock, before Rumors and Dreams, before Stevie Nicks ever twirled across a stage. Fleetwood Mac was a different beast entirely, a British blues band that made Eric Clapton's crew nervous. London, England, 1967, a time when British blues was exploding, and guitarists like Clapton and Page were becoming household names. In a small club called the Nag's Head, drummer Mick Fleetwood and bassist John McVie were backing up Peter Green and John Mayall's Blues Breakers, creating a rhythm section that would soon change music history. Peter Green, having replaced Eric Clapton in the Blues Breakers, had earned himself the nickname the Green God for his soulful guitar playing. But Green had bigger ambitions. In the summer of 1967, he approached Fleetwood with an idea, starting their own band. Peter was the most obvious genius, Mick Fleetwood would later recall. He had something that nobody else had. Initially called Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, named after Mick Fleetwood and John McVie, the band came together with guitarist Jeremy Spencer. Though Green had chosen the name hoping to entice McVie to join, the bassist initially stayed with the security of the Blues Breakers, leading the band to temporarily recruit Bob Brunning on bass. However, within a few weeks, McVie was convinced and joined the group, completing the original lineup. The band quickly established themselves in the London blues scene. Their instrumental Albatross topped the UK charts in 1968, proving that blues could have commercial appeal. The song's gentle, flowing style influenced generations of guitarists, including George Harrison, who later admitted that Albatross inspired the Beatles' Sun King. The hits continued with Man of the World and Oh Well, showcasing Green's masterful guitar work and songwriting abilities. Black Magic Woman, later famously covered by Santana, emerged from this period, demonstrating the band's growing sophistication. Their first two albums, Fleetwood Mac and Mr. Wonderful, cemented their reputation as Britain's premier blues band. However, success took its toll, particularly on Peter Green. During a European tour in 1970, Green began experiencing psychological problems, exacerbated by his experimentation with LSD. His lyrics became darker, as evidenced in the haunting Green Manalashi with the Two-Prong Crown, a song born from his increasing disillusionment with money and fame. In a tragic turn, Green's mental state deteriorated, and in May 1970, he played his last show with the band. "I want to lead a proper Christian life," he told his bandmates. "I want to give my money away to charity." Despite their pleas, Green left the band he had founded, marking the end of Fleetwood Mac's first chapter. The band's blues era, though relatively brief, left an indelible mark on British music. They had proven that blues could be commercially successful while maintaining its artistic integrity. Peter Green's legacy as one of Britain's finest guitarists was secured, with B.B. King's words echoing through rock history, though few could have predicted it at the time. The rhythm section of Mick Fleetwood and John McVie would anchor the band through multiple incarnations, eventually leading to one of the most successful acts in music history. The story of Fleetwood Mac was just beginning, and their greatest triumphs and struggles still lay ahead. Transition years, 1970 to 1974. The departure of Peter Green left Fleetwood Mac at a crossroads. Jeremy Spencer and Danny Kirwan remained as guitarists, but the band's blues foundation had crumbled with their founder's exit. As Mick Fleetwood later wrote, "We were standing in the ruins of what had been the hottest blues band in England. The early 1970s became a period of constant evolution and near dissolution. In February 1971, Jeremy Spencer stepped out of the band's hotel during a US tour, saying he was going to a bookstore. He never returned. Days later, they discovered he had joined a religious cult called the Children of God. The band, already reeling from Green's departure, was forced to cancel tour dates and regroup once again. Enter Bob Welch, an American guitarist who would prove crucial in steering the band toward a new sound. With Welch and Danny Kirwan, Fleetwood Mac began moving away from pure blues toward a more melodic rock sound. Albums like Future Games, 1971, and Bare Trees, 1972, 1972 showcased this evolution, though commercial success remained elusive in the UK. However, their growing popularity in America would prove significant for their future direction, but stability remained out of reach. Danny Kirwan's alcoholism led to his firing in 1972 after a notorious incident where he smashed his head against a bathroom wall and refused to go on stage. The band added guitarist Bob Weston and singer Dave Walker, but Walker's tenure was brief, and Weston was fired in 1974 after having an affair with Mick Fleetwood's wife. Throughout these chaotic years, the rhythm section of Mick Fleetwood and John McVie remained the band's only constant, as John McVie's wife, Christine McVie, who had joined officially in 1970, later remarked, "It was like a revolving door of guitarists, but somehow the music kept evolving." The band relocated to Los Angeles in 1974, seeking a fresh start. It was here that fate would intervene in the form of a chance studio visit. As Mick Fleetwood explored Sound City Studios, he heard a track from an obscure duo called Buckingham Nicks. That chance encounter would lead to the most successful and tumultuous chapter in Fleetwood Mac's history. The transition years, while challenging, had transformed Fleetwood Mac from a British blues band into a California-bound rock outfit ready for reinvention. As Bob Welch later reflected, "I was the bridge between the British and American phases of Fleetwood Mac. That bridge was about to lead to the most commercially successful version of the band, though none of them could have predicted just how high they would soar." The classic lineup forms: 1974 to 1975, Sound City Studios, Los Angeles, 1974. Mick Fleetwood stood transfixed, listening to Frozen Love from an obscure album by Buckingham Nicks. The guitarist's intricate finger picking and the female vocalist's distinctive voice caught his attention immediately. He wasn't looking for two new band members, he just needed a guitarist to replace Bob Welch. But fate had other plans. Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham were struggling California musicians who had released one unsuccessful album together. Their own record label had dropped them, and Buckingham was contemplating quitting music altogether. When Mick Fleetwood called about joining Fleetwood Mac, Buckingham made it clear he and Stevie were a package deal. "I said, Lindsey, we have to do this. It's our last chance," Nicks later recalled. On New Year's Eve 1974, Fleetwood Mac announced their new lineup: Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, Christine McVie, Lindsey Buckingham, and Stevie Nicks. The chemistry was immediate. In the studio, Buckingham's guitar virtuosity and production instincts merged perfectly with Christine McVie's melodic songwriting and Stevie's unique vocal style. The rhythm section of Fleetwood and McVie provided the solid foundation they'd been known for since the Peter Green days. Their first album together, simply titled Fleetwood Mac, 1975, marked a dramatic reinvention. Gone were the blues roots, replaced by California rock sophistication. Christine McVie's Over My Head became the band's first US top 40 hit, but it was Stevie Nicks' Rhiannon, with its mystical imagery and haunting melody, that captured America's imagination. The sight of Nicks, draped in black chiffon, twirling across stages while performing the song would become iconic. The album took almost a year to gain traction, but when it did, success was massive. Fleetwood Mac reached #1 on the Billboard charts, selling over 5 million copies. The band had finally found mainstream success, but personal relationships within the group were beginning to fray. Stevie and Lindsey's long-term relationship was ending, and John and Christine McVie's marriage was crumbling. As 1976 approached, the band was poised for even greater success, but the personal turmoil that would fuel their next album was already brewing. The stage was set for what would become not just their masterpiece, but one of the greatest albums in rock history, though the path to creating it would test them all. Peak years, Rumors era, 1976 to 1979. You can go your own way. These words, snarled by Lindsey Buckingham into a microphone in early 1976, weren't just lyrics, they were missiles aimed at Stevie Nicks across the recording studio. The sessions for what would become Rumors were underway, and Fleetwood Mac was simultaneously falling apart and creating their masterpiece. The situation was almost comically complicated. Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham had ended their 8-year relationship. Christine and John McVie were divorcing after 8 years of marriage. Mick Fleetwood was dealing with his own divorce while beginning a secret affair with Stevie Nicks. Yet somehow, they kept showing up at the Record Plant studio in Sausalito, California, channeling their pain into what would become one of the best-selling albums of all time. The only way we could deal with the pain was to sing about it, Christine McVie later said, and sing they did. Each song became a battlefield of emotions. Nicks wrote Dreams about Buckingham, players only love you when they're playing, while he responded with the bitter Go Your Own Way. Christine McVie contributed the optimistic Don't Stop and the poignant Songbird, while You Make Loving Fun was about her new boyfriend, the band's lighting director. The recording process was fueled by endless cocaine, California wine, and raw emotion. Technical perfectionist Buckingham insisted on take after take, while the rhythm section of Fleetwood and John McVie laid down impeccable tracks despite their personal turmoil. The result was sonic perfection, pristine harmonies over crystalline instrumentals, with every note carrying emotional weight. Released in February 1977, Rumors became a cultural phenomenon. It spent 31 weeks at #1 and spawned 4 top 10 singles. The album seemed to capture the zeitgeist of the late 70s, the aftermath of the idealistic 60s, when relationships were becoming more complicated and divorce more common. Audiences connected with the raw honesty of the songs and the blend of pain and catchy pop hooks. The subsequent tour was a 13-month marathon, with the band playing to packed arenas worldwide. On stage, the drama played out in real time, Stevie and Lindsay alternating between passionate performance and barely concealed animosity, while John and Christine McVie communicated only through their instruments. By 1979, Rumors had become one of the best-selling albums ever, eventually surpassing 40 million copies. The band was at their commercial peak, but the pressure to follow up such massive success was immense. As Mick Fleetwood noted, "We had gone through hell to create a hell of an album. The question was, what do you do after that?" The answer would come in their next ambitious project, as Lindsey Buckingham pushed the band toward experimental territory that would both challenge and divide them. The Rumors era had made them superstars, but it had also fundamentally changed them. There was no going back to the relatively simple days of their early success. Experimental period, 1979 to 1987. In the wake of Rumors, most bands would have played it safe. Instead, Fleetwood Mac, driven largely by Lindsey Buckingham's artistic ambitions, took a sharp left turn. Tusk, released in 1979, was a deliberately experimental double album that cost over $1 million to make, the most expensive rock album produced at that time. Buckingham, inspired by the emerging punk and new wave movements, pushed the band into unfamiliar territory. The title track featured the USC Marching Band and was recorded at Dodger Stadium. Songs like Sarah showcased Nicks at her most ethereal, while Christine McVie provided commercial anchors like Think About Me. The album, though selling 4 million copies, was considered a commercial disappointment compared to Rumors. As Mick Fleetwood later admitted, it was Lindsey's way of breaking the chain of expectation. The strain of constant recording and touring began to take its toll. Each member released solo projects. Nicks found massive success with Belladonna, 1981, while Buckingham released his quirky Law and Order the same year. Despite their separate ventures, they came together for 1982's Mirage, a conscious return to more commercial territory that produced hits like Gypsy and Hold Me. The mid-1980s saw the band members increasingly pursuing their individual paths. Nicks built a huge solo career with albums like The Wild Heart and Rock a Little. However, they reunited for 1987's Tango in the Night, which would become their second best-selling album. The record featured hits like Little Lies and Seven Wonders, but the old tensions remained. Buckingham, struggling with the pressure, left the band just before the subsequent tour. This period marked Fleetwood Mac's last great creative surge as a 5-piece unit. Though they continued to produce solid material, the magical chemistry of the classic lineup proved impossible to fully recapture. As Christine McVie later reflected, "We were all writing from different places by then, but somehow it still worked. That's the mystery of Fleetwood Mac." Later years and legacy, Lindsey Buckingham's departure in 1987 didn't end Fleetwood Mac's story. The band continued evolving, recruiting guitarists Billy Burnett and Rick Vito. Though Behind the Mask, 1990, marked a commercial decline, the band's resilience showed through multiple transitions. The classic lineup reunited for Bill Clinton's 1993 inauguration and again for 1997's hugely successful The Dance. Christine McVie's departure in 1998 and return in 2014, Buckingham's controversial firing in 2018, and Christine's passing in 2022 marked significant milestones in their journey. Today, Fleetwood Mac's influence resonates through generations. From Rumour's template of turning personal turmoil into art to Tusk's fearless experimentation, they've inspired countless artists. Their impact echoes in Taylor Swift's songwriting, modern indie bands' harmonies, and Stevie Nicks' enduring influence on fashion and mystical imagery. As new audiences discover their music through streaming platforms, Fleetwood Mac's timeless themes of love, loss, and resilience continue to captivate listeners worldwide. Love Fleetwood Mac? Want to dive deeper into more legendary band stories? Hit subscribe below and join our community of music enthusiasts. Let's explore the greatest stories in rock history together.